from my distant vantage point when it comes to LeBron, I can see all the nonsense that dude is on. I can see all the lies the dude tells. I can see all the times that he is basically hypocritical. I can see all the times that he contradicts himself. I can see the way he moves in terms of, doing people dirty behind him and all these things, right? We can see all that. Now, can we also say that we can see that he's done some great things in the community off the court? Yeah, we can say that. Can we say that we can see that he's done a lot of great things on the court? Yeah, we can say that, but we got to play it down the middle and talk about, both sides of the coin. I always talk about that, right? Why do people get on me for the way I talk about LeBron? People get on me for the way I talk about LeBron because I refuse to be that guy that's going to, I'm going to use the term here, refuse to be that guy that's going to be a glazer like so much of the mainstream media is when it comes to LeBron. I refuse to be that guy, like I talked about at the beginning of this, that's going to laud his 4 championships and his 4 finals MVPs, but ignore the fact that he lost 6 times on the biggest stage, more than any other former MVP in the history of the sport, right? I'm not going to be that guy. I can't be that guy. Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast. Yes. And as you can see by the thumbnail and by the rundown, wanted to talk about the one and only Pat McAfee and, his interesting comments that were kind of recently unearthed in regards to LeBron James. So definitely wanted to get on here, talk about that. Didn't want to do a live on it. Sometimes I do the lives and I go crazy and I'm on here for like 2 hours on one topic. Didn't want to do that, but did want to take a few minutes to discuss this because I thought it was interesting. And well, I'm sure the LeBron fans will have some reason to argue against this and some to say and some to complain about. And I only talk about LeBron and blah, blah, blah. Well, hey, man, the guy's a needle mover. And again, like I always say, where are you guys when I'm talking about other stuff? So I got to talk about what you want to hear about, right? So anyway, cool. Before we get into that, you know what time it is. Let's make it happen. If you're watching here on YouTube, make sure you go ahead, click that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept aware anytime we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio-only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you enjoy the content as you listen, make sure you give us a like, a 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us, and write it down, put it in your phones, make a note of it. The Format Podcast is live Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern. And finally, if you're really and truly enjoying the podcast and you want to help the show continue to grow, make sure you go ahead, click that join button, join the channel. We're going to have some exclusive content just for you. Just for you. All right, guys. So let's go ahead and let's talk about it, right? So listen, if you're here, you're probably not new to the channel, but you might be. So if you're new to the channel, like the little spiel said, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. And thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. But let me give a little recap. All right. I've been talking about LeBron for years, well before I went to journalism school, well before I even, started doing this podcast or anything like that. When you are, doing the barbershop talk, when you're just talking amongst your guys about sports, etc. Well, we know LeBron's been one of the biggest names in sports for 24 years now. He's been in the league 22 years. And for the 2 years prior to that, he was already, chosen one and King James and all that. And, the hype machine was well in action to play a role in getting LeBron to the place where he is now, right? Am I saying that the hype machine is the reason why LeBron is where he is now? Of course not, right? LeBron has had an all-time great career. Let me say that again. I want to be clear. LeBron James has had an all-time great career. Let me say that one more time. Matter of fact, let me rephrase it. LeBron James has had one of the greatest careers in the history of the game of basketball, right? We know he's the all-time leading scorer in professional basketball globally. We know he's got 4 championships, 4 MVPs, 4 finals MVPs. Hell of a resume, right? I'm not the guy that's going to skip over the 6 finals losses, so let me throw that in there as well. Even though he's won 4 finals MVPs and won 4 championships, a couple he got saved on, but that's not what this show is about. He still does have 6 finals losses, and we cannot ignore that. No matter how much some of you, LeBron, I'm gonna borrow a term from my guy Uncommon Sense, fanboys want to do it. We cannot erase the fact that he has 6 finals losses, and he's lucky he doesn't have 8 finals losses. But again, whole totally different conversation. So now let's do this, right? And as I mentioned, Uncommon Sense, shout out to Uncommon Sense. I appreciate you. I believe it was his show where I first found out about this topic. And so if you're not subscribed to that, man, go subscribe to Uncommon Sense. He is a truth teller, and he gives it to you how it should be given to you. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't play the games. He's all about the truth and, just real basketball and love for the game and love for what it once was. But anyway, here's the deal. I've always talked about how LeBron James's career has been contrived, how so much of the hype surrounding him is just that hype, and the media machine has done so much to help uplift this guy. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate, he has had one of the all-time great careers in history, so he's done a whole lot of that heavy lifting, on his own. But the media machine has done a great deal to help him, right? I've always said this stuff was manufactured because if from my distant perspective, I'm going to say relatively distant, right? I mean, we're all closer than we've ever been to professional athletes and stars and stuff than we've ever been before. Why? Because of the advent of social media, because of the way sports is covered now. Everything is so much 24-hour news cycle. Everything is so much more up close. We know a lot more than we ever did, but we're still relatively distant, right? Now, that said, from my distant vantage point, when it comes to LeBron, I can see all the nonsense that dude is on. I can see all the lies the dude tells. I can see all the times that he is basically hypocritical. I can see all the times that he contradicts himself. I can see the way he moves in terms of, doing people dirty behind him and all these things, right? We can see all that. Now, can we also say that we can see that he's done some great things in the community off the court? Yeah, we can say that. Can we say that we can see that he's done a lot of great things on the court? Yeah, we can say that, but we got to play it down the middle and talk about, both sides of the coin. I always talk about that, right? Why do people get on me for the way I talk about LeBron? People get on me for the way I talk about LeBron because I refuse to be that guy that's going to, I'm going to use the term here, I'm refuse to be that guy that's going to be a glazer like so much of the mainstream media is when it comes to LeBron. I refuse to be that guy, like I talked about at the beginning of this, that's going to laud his 4 championships and his 4 finals MVPs, but ignore the fact that he lost 6 times on the biggest stage, more than any other former MVP in the history of the sport, right? I'm not going to be that guy. I can't be that guy. So the reason that you guys think I'm a hater or I wake up every day hating on a black man and this, that, and the third is because I don't deliver the LeBron propaganda that you want me to deliver. I don't speak about LeBron in the way that you are used to hearing about LeBron in terms of just the over-the-top worship, right? What do I always say? They talk about LeBron as if he heals the sick, walks on water, and raises the dead. I'm never going to talk about LeBron like that. I'm not going to. I understand that some people don't like that. But what I do try to do in every possible case, I try to tell the truth. So now, I've talked about how contrived LeBron's career has been in terms of the media manipulation, in terms of his and his team doing a fantastic job of manipulating the media, making sure that they talk about him and present him in a certain way. And we know that, right? We know that because the media, has told us, right? We heard Kendrick Perkins recently, like about 2 weeks ago. He and Stephen A. Smith on First Take, and K. Perk was saying how um, LeBron unfollowed him on social media because he said some things LeBron didn't like, right? We know for a fact that LeBron has sent members of Clutch to go talk to Perk because Perk says things that he doesn't like on TV. We know for a fact that Rick Bucher has received emails from Clutch pushing for LeBron to be in an MVP race when he didn't deserve to be, right? We know all these things. All these people, right? These aren't our opinions. These are things that have been put out there, right? Whether it's by Stephen A. Smith, whether it's by Kendrick Perkins, whether it's by Rick Bucher, right? All people who are known in the media have connections inside and out in terms of the NBA, et cetera, right? We know this. So these are just examples of LeBron doing what he can to try and manipulate the media, right? We saw him, and this is kind of where this episode is going. We saw him on the Pat McAfee show about 2 weeks ago, right? Spent about a solid 75 minutes there. You can go back on this channel. I really took some time, broke down that whole show and so much of what LeBron had to say and what Pat McAfee had to say. And honestly, like I said, I believe Pat McAfee did not do a good job in terms of conducting that interview. Pat McAfee was basically there just, agreeing with everything LeBron said, laughing at LeBron and his jokes like they were bros. And I thought it was super, super interesting that Pat McAfee did that because I'm like, but then I'm like, why would you get an opportunity to interview LeBron James? Like, why would you just make it a softball fest, right? You're not asking him any real questions. You're just lobbing softballs. Everything he says, you're just going with it and you're playing along. You're playing a role, right? And LeBron is playing that role with you. Now, I suppose it was probably made clear to Pat McAfee through one channel or another that you are going to treat this with kid gloves. This is not going to be a real interview because what? If it was going to be a real interview asking any tough questions, there's no way LeBron James would have done it, right? LeBron James knows who he's talking to. He knows what he's saying when he's talking to said people. He's very astute when it comes to dealing with the media. And again, um, creating this image and maintaining this image, right? But as we've noticed over time towards the end of his career, right, as we've seen the last couple of years, that image has started to crack. It started to fade. More and more people are telling the truth, right? And again, you can go back through the annals of this particular channel, and you can see all the different episodes I've done discussing that. And it's not just me sitting here again from a relative distance talking this stuff, right? When I say the things that I say, what do? I get the sound, right? I get the Rick Bucher sound. I get the Kendrick Perkins sound. I get the Stephen A. Smith sound. I get the sound from Mario Chalmers. I get the sound from Michael Beasley, right? Both former teammates. I get the sound from Ray Allen, who played against him. I get the sound from Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, who also played against him. So I get the sound from players who played against him. I get the sound from players who played with him. I get the sound from players from previous generations, Isaiah Thomas, right? I get the sound from media members who have both praised him and critiqued him, Michael Wilbon, right? I got the sound from all these people. So for those of you who want to think I'm just sitting here making stuff up, no, I get the corroboration from all around. Again, former teammates, former opposition, people who played in the league before him, media members, etc. So that's one thing. That's one thing that I'm all about, right? When it comes to it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I get the corroborating information, right? So, I'm like, I don't understand for the life of me why, people will go at those of us who say we're going to come out here and tell the truth. But anyway, back to McAfee. Here's the deal. So he was on McAfee a couple of weeks ago, and, we had the other questions of why did he go on McAfee, him being LeBron James? Why didn't he go on well, we know why he's not going to go on the Stephen A. Smith show, but why didn't he go on Shannon Sharp's show? Why didn't he go on Nick Wright's show? Why didn't he go on Draymond Green's show, right? Three of the biggest glazers in the pro LeBron media. He could have gone on there and gotten out everything he needed to get out, right? He could have pushed his narrative and what have you, so on and so forth with these three guys who aren't going to push back on anything and are basically going to be his conduit to pushing more lies, inconsistencies, half truths, etc., to the masses. But he went on McAfee. And so, like I said, it was an interesting interview. He said a lot, but I didn't like the way McAfee conducted it, but that's fine. But why am I bringing up McAfee? And why does it say McAfee exposed here on the rundown, right? Only one topic, but still, it's a rundown. But why does it say McAfee exposed? It says McAfee is exposed. Why? Because he got caught out there. And so, like I said, I was listening to, I believe it was Uncommon Sense, and he talked about this and I thought it was very interesting. I'm like, I got to go find that clip. So I went and I found that clip, which, by the way, is not an easy clip to find. I wonder if that's by design, right? So Pat McAfee was saying some stuff about LeBron that actually was shocking. I believe this is from 2019. But what really got me, we know that Clutch Sports, right, and LeBron James are very, very, these guys are hypersensitive, right? It's almost like they scour the internet looking for people who are talking about LeBron in a way that they do not like. They look for people talking about LeBron in a way that's not commensurate with pushing the particular narrative that they want to get out there about LeBron, right? And so it's very interesting to me that somehow this slipped past Clutch Sports and LeBron ended up doing this show with Pat McAfee. And I'm like, why? So let's check out the clip. And when you hear the clip, then you'll understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. So this is Pat McAfee, I believe, circa 2019, talking about LeBron James. It's not a very long clip. I think it's what, about a minute and 10 seconds. So yeah, we'll listen to it. I might have a couple of stops in there just so I don't forget the things that I want to say, but we'll listen to it and then we'll come back. Let's go.
That guy stinks, by the way. I am done with him.
Now, he starts out, that guy stinks, by the way. I'm done with him. Let's carry on.
Ron?
I'm done with him.
Well, you didn't like his antics last night?
I just everything. But he went to Los Angeles and he's become very difficult to like. He's become a very difficult person to like.
Now, I'll say this, LeBron, as we know, really is a very difficult person to like. Why? Not because I'm saying it, but because he's one of the most polarizing figures maybe in all of celebrity, right? He's clearly one of the most polarizing athletes, but he may be one of the most polarizing figures overall in all of celebrity. So this is not like something new. He really is a difficult guy to like. And, we can run down a number of reasons why I feel that way, but not even going to get into that now. That could be a whole hour-long show by itself. But we hear McAfee now. And remember, this is the guy we saw a couple of weeks ago yucking it up with LeBron. But here we go in 2019 saying he's really difficult to like. Let's go on.
I was a diehard LeBron James fan.
Yeah.
Since high school. I watched him in high school. He came in, played against the Pennsylvania All-Stars just as high school, and he dunked from the foul line on some little white kid from my high school.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that guy's really good at basketball. I like that guy.
Yeah.
Had a shoe deal, was driving a Hummer, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Cleveland, then he went to Miami, back to Cleveland. But this year, he got his guy. He's got Anthony Davis. He's got his guy. He's got a team, got a new coach. Then he tries to copyright Taco Tuesday.
So I'll tell you, right? Another thing with LeBron, I think he's really arrogant to the point of being disconnected with reality sometimes, right? And let's be real here, keep it a buck. All the great athletes are arrogant, right? Muhammad Ali was exceedingly arrogant. At least his public persona was. People who know him say he was exceedingly humble. Obviously, I would attribute a great deal of that to his devout faith in Islam. Humility is a big part of that. And so I would think that has a major role with Muhammad Ali. But his outward public presence was that of a very arrogant athlete. We know Larry Bird, exceedingly arrogant. But again, like people who know him internally, just a down-to-earth, humble guy. But on the court, Larry Bird said some things that were ridiculous. Magic Johnson, arrogant. All the great athletes, Floyd Mayweather Jr., Sugar Ray Leonard, Michael Jordan, of course. And we can go down the line throughout the sports. The great athletes have that arrogance about them because they know the work that they put in to master their craft, and that lends them to believe that there's nothing they can't do. Kobe Bryant, so on and so forth, right? And so that's kind of where some of that arrogance comes from, right? But LeBron, he almost seems arrogant in a different way, right? Like I said, arrogant almost to the point of being disconnected with reality. And why do I say that? You live in California. California has an extremely high Latin American, I would say Mexican American population, right? California, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, those states like that. Extremely high Latin American, Mexican population. And LeBron has the arrogance to think that he would get away with copywriting Taco Tuesday in California. It got thrown out, of course, but like that arrogance is like above the pale to me. Like, how could you really think that you were even going to get away with that in California? Like, that doesn't make sense, but let's go on.
Then the China stuff, which just makes him look like an absolute buffoon.
So we hear Pat McAfee there call LeBron a buffoon, or more precisely say that he looked like a buffoon based on his commentary about China, right? And why was the commentary about China a big deal? This is around the time when Daryl Morey got in big trouble with the league because he was pushing back on China because of a lot of the behaviors that the Chinese government was undertaking, right? Basically the forced slavery and mistreatment of the Uyghur Muslims in the western part of the country. There were reports that in some prison camps they were being forced to eat pork, and as we know, like pork is forbidden for Muslims and for Jewish people. So they were being forbidden to eat pork. I don't know why they not forbidden, forced to eat pork. I don't know why the Chinese government was doing that. I guess to try and disavow them and break them of their Islamic faith and traditions. They were being forced into slave labor, etc. Also, we know that China mistreating Taiwan, trying to take that over. And Daryl Morey, he had commentary against China, but we know that the NBA is very much in bed with China. China is the biggest consumer of the NBA product on earth. And so they can't allow anybody, they being the NBA, they can't allow anybody in their environs to really go at China too tough, because they can't afford to lose that gigantic revenue source. And of course, LeBron James being a mega Nike guy, right? And Nike having a lot of plants and stuff in China, a lot of stuff being made in China. LeBron basically pushed back on that and was like, hey, basically was standing up for and defending China, which is odd, right? Because LeBron is supposed to be some social justice warrior, right? But when his money got involved, all that social justice went out the window, right? Yeah, I can't talk about China, because what? Again, China, biggest consumer of the NBA globally. And of course, Nike, a lot of work with China. So LeBron stood up for that. And so that's what McAfee is talking about here when he says, the China stuff made him look like a buffoon. I think that was when LeBron kind of backed down a little bit later and said something along the lines of, a lot of people or myself, I wasn't educated on the topic. I think that was that. But regardless, yeah, so, LeBron, social justice warrior, but the social justice disappeared when, we were talking about his money, when we were talking about the NBA and Nike's links with China. But let's go on.
He starts yelling during the national anthem.
So obviously we know this is this is not around that time, but the point is, again, LeBron James, social justice warrior. We know that many people, many minorities in this country are not particularly what's the word I'm looking for, comfortable with the national anthem, because we know that it has verses in it that basically stand for slavery, right? And so as well, many people feel like the values espoused in the national anthem, at least the verses that we generally listen to and sing, those values are not necessarily and haven't necessarily been held up by the American government and the American society pretty much for the entirety of America's existence, right? And so we've seen a lot of people, especially professional athletes, maybe take a knee during the national anthem to say, hey, we saw Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, formerly Chris Jackson, we saw him get blackballed from the NBA in the 90s, basically, because he wanted to sit quietly and pray during the national anthem instead of standing. So we know that there have been, what's the word I'm looking for? There have been a number of silent, quiet protests during the national anthem over the years, right? And so then, again, LeBron James, a social justice warrior, so to speak. I don't believe he really is, but he puts on a good show of it anyway. So there was a game, and the national anthem was playing, and you'll hear the clip where he's going to walk by and he's going to yell out during the national anthem, "Let's go." Let's go! So you heard him there yelling, "Let's go," during the national anthem. Like, that's so disrespectful. No matter how you feel about the national anthem, you don't do that, right? And that's why I made a point to reference Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf sitting and quietly praying during the national anthem, right? Whether praying for himself, for his teammates, for the United States of America to live up to its ideals, whether we saw Colin Kaepernick and others kneeling during the national anthem, right? Kneeling being a gesture of submission, being more respectful, right? As someone who served in the United States military, right? I'm fully aware that people have the right to do what they want to do. And part of the military and what we do overseas and what we do domestically is to ensure that Americans have the right to their freedoms, right? So I'm not saying you can't do what you don't want to do, but I think the general disrespect, that wasn't cool. Like, why would you do that? You couldn't wait till it was over and yell "Let's go" real loud right at the end of the anthem. You couldn't do that. Why did you have to yell it during the national anthem? Like, as an American, like, that was just rude. I think that was disrespectful to so many people. And if we're going to take it there, disrespectful to the people who died in defense of your right to do that, right? We know how many have, died throughout the years, whether it's the Civil War, trying to bring this country back together, whether it was World War I, whether it was World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, all the wars since, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, so all these things, like, why would you do that? So again, all these things are things Pat McAfee is pointing to that's saying it makes LeBron look extremely unlikable, right? Let's go on.
And then they lose. It's just like Bron. This was not a game that you could do after everything you've done the last couple months that have made it very difficult to like you. You've become a person, though, that is tough to like. Yeah. Very difficult to like.
So you hear it. You've become a person that is tough to like, very difficult to like. So the funny thing is, this is something that I was saying years before this. It's really interesting on the whole how people kind of reach their points of acceptance at different times in life, right? There are things that I have learned in the last 5 years, right? I'm 46 now. There's things I've learned in the last 5 years. Maybe I should have learned 15 or 20 years ago, but people learn and accept different things at different points in life, right? And so it is interesting when you see that. But I'll tell you again, man, the frustration for me is that LeBron has managed to hoodwink so many people for so long and still does, right? We got people who watch this channel religiously who will go into attack mode when I criticize LeBron. But why? Why? Am I making stuff up? Am I saying stuff that's not true? Everyone sees it. Everyone sees it. But here's the thing, right? Back to my original premise that so much of this stuff when it comes to LeBron is phony and manufactured. Because why is it taking now, people all of a sudden are now telling the truth, right? Stephen A, Kendrick Perkins, Mike Wilbon, all these different players, right? Pat McAfee. This is how we know so much of this stuff is phony, but we get it. LeBron for a while has been one of or the face of the NBA. And when you're that, and you have these networks that have high level connections with you or Nike, et cetera, you wield a lot of power, right? And, you know, these networks wield a lot of power. So you can't rattle that cage. You can't ruffle those feathers. You can't knock over that apple cart too much, right? Because you're going to be messing with what? Mess with the bread, right? And you can't do that. And I'm not saying that necessarily people are on the take, but there are certain things that people understand in these positions where the connections are, so they can't come out here and tell the truth in terms of what they know and what they see. They got to play along and they got to play the role. So McAfee is just another one that's been exposed, right? Because, you know, again, 2 weeks ago or however 3 weeks ago, he was LeBron's best bud, you know, yucking it up, smoking and joking on the Pat McAfee show when LeBron came out there and did his interview and talked about Stephen A. Smith and his tidy whiteies eating ice cream on the couch. And once again, I don't know why you would ever reference another man's underwear and what he's doing on the couch, but whatever. LeBron coming out there on McAfee and disrespecting Brian Windhorst, flat out lying about him, a guy that has always had his best interests at heart and been a major part of the media machine that has helped LeBron get to this level, you know. So, yeah, just yucking it up, man, Pat McAfee. But we see he's been exposed because now we got the clip, words out of his own mouth on things that he said. So he knows what LeBron is. He knows what that guy's about. But guess what? He's got to play the role. At that time, he wasn't with ESPN. Now he's with ESPN. He's got to play the role. So there you have it. I just wanted to do a quick show today. This is a lot quicker than my normal ones. And I wanted to give my thoughts on Pat McAfee, trash talking LeBron, and basically being exposed for his hypocrisy, being exposed for playing the role. That's what it is, man. And there's so many of them that do that. For years, we heard Stephen A. caping up for LeBron for years. And now we finally hear him telling the truth because LeBron tried to herb him, right? We for years, we heard K Perk caping up for LeBron. But what? Now we hear him finally telling the truth because LeBron tried to herb him. So, I mean, there's a lot. And what I'm saying is I'm glad that the truth is finally coming out. I'm not glad that it took all this time, but I'm glad that the truth is finally coming out. And it just goes to show that eventually the truth is always going to come out. So if you haven't already, on the way out of here, let's go ahead, click that like and that subscribe. Thanks for hanging around this long. Appreciate it. This was, like I said, a quick one. Wanted to give my thoughts on Pat McAfee exposing himself in terms of LeBron, and we see how fake that was the other day, that show that he did a few weeks back with LeBron where he was just yucking it up trying to be his buddy. So yeah, we'll be back. Next episode was today, Tuesday, so we'll be back Wednesday night with another episode. So looking forward to that. Getting ramped up for the NBA playoffs. I know we've got the play-in this week and then the playoffs start next week. So getting ramped up for that. Super excited. Finally, the regular season is over. And, you know, for all the complaining realistically that I do about the state of the modern NBA, and no, it'll never be what it was when I was coming up loving basketball so much in the 90s. However, we do know, and we have seen in the last few years, NBA playoff basketball is still pretty darn good. Guys are really defending. Guys are chippy out there. Guys are really trying to win. So again, it'll never be what it once was, but it's pretty darn good, and it's a lot better than it is in the regular season. So enjoy the playing, y'all, and we'll be back and we'll talk about it, and we'll get you all prepped up and ready for the NBA playoffs. So y'all have a good one. We out. Peace.